Roman Reigns returns and shocks Paul Heyman while Seth Rollins is out of SummerSlam. The tribal chief is back, and he's not happy. Roman Reigns makes his stunning return to WWE and confronts Paul Heyman in a tense backstage moment that has fans talking. Meanwhile, Seth Rollins is hospitalized with a serious knee injury, officially ruling him out of SummerSlam 2025. In this dramatic turn of events, alliances are tested, power shifts are brewing, and Roman Reigns is ready to reclaim his throne. This is the video WWE fans can't afford to miss. What if I told you that the man who built his legacy on silence just broke it in the most earth-shattering way possible? That the one figure who once stood at the helm of WWE, controlling chaos with a cold stare and a calm hand, has just returned, and he's not here to entertain. He's here to take back what was stolen from him. Not a title, not a match. Something far more dangerous, his throne. This isn't just a return, this is a reckoning. In the ever-shifting world of WWE, silence can be louder than a steel chair shot. And for over 3 months, the loudest man in the company, the so-called tribal chief, Roman Reigns, was nowhere to be found. No entrances. No promos. No backstage sightings. The leader of the bloodline had disappeared from the battlefield, leaving behind chaos, fractured loyalties, and an empire on the verge of collapse. Until now. The cameras didn't catch his flight landing. There was no grand pyro or walk down the ramp. This wasn't a triumphant return staged for the spotlight. This was different. This was real. Roman Reigns walked into the backstage area of Monday Night Raw like a ghost returned from the dead, and the first man he locked eyes with was not Solo Sikoa, not Cody Rhodes, and not even Seth Rollins. It was Paul Heyman. The man who once called himself the Wiseman. The man who, in Roman's absence, whispered commands into the ears of giants and monsters. The man who aligned himself with Seth Rollins to maintain order in the vacuum of power. The man who claimed to be loyal to Roman Reigns, even as he positioned himself at the center of a new faction. A new alliance. A new agenda. And when Roman confronted him, he didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He simply stared. That piercing, unreadable gaze that once ruled over SmackDown like a sovereign crown. But what made this moment so electric, so haunting, wasn't just Roman's return. It was what had happened only hours before. Seth Rollins was rushed to the hospital. A sudden, career-threatening knee injury. No warning. No preparation. One of the biggest names in WWE had just been taken off the SummerSlam card, permanently. And Paul Heyman? He looked relieved. Coincidence? Or something far more calculated? This is not just a recap. This is not just a highlight reel. This is the story of fractured loyalty, of an empire crumbling from within, and of a king's return to a kingdom that no longer fears him. It's the story of how a silent war has been brewing behind the scenes of WWE for months, and how the unexpected collapse of Seth Rollins may not have been as unexpected as it seems. Because when Roman Reigns came back, he didn't come alone. Flanking him were Jacob Fatu and Zilla Fatu, 2 men with violence in their veins and vengeance in their eyes. Men who owe no allegiance to Heyman. Men who carry bloodline in their DNA, but revolution in their hearts. If there's one thing clear after this week's Raw, it's this: the line between ally and enemy is no longer visible. And for Paul Heyman, the consequences of betrayal are only just beginning. But before we dive deeper into the confrontation that shocked the wrestling world, and the medical emergency that sidelined Seth Rollins in the prime of his reign, we need to rewind. We need to understand the forces that led us here. Because this wasn't spontaneous. This was orchestrated. And someone, somewhere, is pulling the strings. Let's start with the silence. The silence of Roman Reigns. It wasn't long ago that Roman Reigns was everywhere. Main events. Championship defenses. Press conferences. From his tribal entrance at WrestleMania to his emotionally charged title defense against Cody Rhodes, Roman Reigns wasn't just a superstar, he was the gravity of WWE. Everything orbited around him. And then, just as suddenly as he ascended, he vanished. No injury was reported. No farewell speech was given. No press release offered closure. The man simply walked away. In the wake of his departure, the bloodline fractured into warring factions. Solo Sikoa began asserting dominance, bringing in new allies. Jimmy Uso defected. Jacob Fatu began making waves, violently. And amidst the chaos, Paul Heyman stood tall. Smiling, scheming, speaking on behalf of men who had no interest in being spoken for. But while the wrestling world moved on, rumors began to swirl. Whispers of Roman's discontent. Of betrayal. Of hidden power struggles within WWE creative. Some said Roman was buying time, watching from a distance. Others claimed he was done with wrestling altogether. But the truth was more disturbing. Roman wasn't hiding. He was hunting. And the man he was watching the closest? Was Paul Heyman. Because Heyman didn't just step into a leadership role. He reinvented the narrative. Aligning with Seth Rollins, once the architect of the Shield, Heyman positioned himself at the heart of a new dynasty. Rollins' charisma, Heyman's strategy, Solo's brute force, and Braun Breaker's rising intensity created a dangerous coalition. The message was clear: Roman Reigns may have been the past, but they were the future. Or so they thought. Then came SummerSlam's build-up. The match card. The promos. And the announcement that Seth Rollins would headline the event with the WWE Championship on the line. Everything was going according to plan. Until it wasn't. Because on that fateful Raw, just hours before Roman's return, Seth Rollins collapsed. Not figuratively. Not in storyline. Physically. Medical staff rushed to his side. Cameras were ordered to cut. By the time the show returned from commercial break, he was gone. Whispers of a severe ligament injury spread like wildfire. Rumors of a 9-month recovery window. And just like that, the main event of SummerSlam was cancelled. No press release. No farewell speech. No backup plan. And as the lights dimmed on Rollins' title reign, the camera caught one unexpected image backstage. A pair of boots. Black. Laced. Heavy. And a single glove, clenched in fury. Roman Reigns had returned. And the first person he walked past? Was Paul Heyman. Frozen. Pale. Staring into the eyes of the man he thought he'd outlived. And that's when everything changed. In the coming chapters, we'll take you inside that confrontation. We'll show you footage that never aired on TV. We'll break down the hidden tensions that exploded behind closed doors. We'll speak to sources inside the locker room who've watched this power struggle unfold for months. Because this isn't just about one return. This is about a legacy on the line. A family divided. A kingdom at war. And the return of a king who refuses to be dethroned. Now, what if I told you, the injury to Seth Rollins wasn't just bad luck? What if I told you, it was a warning? Stay with us. Everything you thought you knew about the bloodline is about to change. It was supposed to be another unforgettable night on Monday Night Raw. The build to SummerSlam was in full force, with tensions boiling, rivalries intensifying, and the WWE Universe watching closely as Seth Rollins, the World Heavyweight Champion, the visionary, the architect, prepared to cement his place in history once again. He had beaten the odds before. He had carried the company through some of its darkest and most uncertain eras. And now, heading into SummerSlam, he was set to headline one of the most anticipated main events in recent memory. But fate had other plans. The night began as many others had in recent months. Rollins entered the arena to a thunderous ovation, the audience belting out his theme song in perfect unison, his signature swagger in full force. Dressed in one of his wild, unpredictable suits and holding the world title high above his head, he looked every bit the confident champion. But behind the showmanship, behind the bravado, something was off. You couldn't see it in his face. You couldn't hear it in his voice. But you could feel it. Maybe it was the way he limped slightly when the cameras weren't directly on him. Maybe it was the tense look in the trainer's room before the show, or the icy exchange he shared backstage with Paul Heyman. Or maybe it was the fact that he had no idea what was coming next. As the main event approached, Seth was scheduled to team with Cody Rhodes against Solo Sikoa and Braun Breaker, Heyman's new muscle. It was a match meant to excite. A preview of SummerSlam's chaos. But just minutes into the match, something went horribly wrong. Seth landed awkwardly after delivering a springboard knee strike. His body twisted unnaturally. He reached for his leg immediately. The referee rushed in. The crowd grew quiet. Then the signal was made. The dreaded X above the official's head. It was real. In the chaos that followed, Cody tried to finish the match alone, but the atmosphere had changed completely. The commentary team grew visibly nervous. Corey Graves' voice cracked. Michael Cole stopped making jokes. It was no longer about the match. It was about a man who may have just lost everything in an instant. Backstage, there was silence. No yelling, no scrambling. Just silence. Medical personnel worked swiftly to stabilize the knee. Rollins tried to walk, then collapsed. Becky Lynch, still in her gear from earlier in the night, ran to his side. Security held back cameras. Phones were confiscated. But one image, just one, leaked online before the lockdown took full effect. Seth Rollins. Head down. Tears in his eyes. His hands shaking. Not in pain, but in disbelief. Because this wasn't just an injury. This was a dream shattered. By midnight, the locker room was quiet. The chaos had settled. The show was over. But for Seth Rollins, everything was just beginning. He was rushed to the hospital under heavy security. That same night, WWE issued a brief, vague statement. Seth Rollins sustained an injury to his right knee during his match on Monday Night Raw. Medical professionals are evaluating the extent of the damage. We will provide further updates as they become available. No further explanation. No mention of SummerSlam. No predictions. But backstage? Everyone already knew the truth. Rollins had suffered a full ACL tear and a partial MCL rupture, possibly worse than the one he endured in 2015. The scan was clear. Surgery would be required. Recovery time? 9 months minimum. And that meant only one thing. Seth Rollins was out of SummerSlam. Just like that, the World Heavyweight Championship was without a match. The biggest show of the summer had lost its main event. And the WWE Universe was left reeling. Fans flooded social media with messages of support. Hashtags like #ThankYouRollins and #PrayForSeth trended worldwide. But nothing could change the truth. The visionary had been broken. In an exclusive, unreleased interview filmed hours before the match, Seth had spoken to WWE 24 cameras about the toll his title reign had taken on his body. "Every time I step into that ring, it's a sacrifice," he said, wiping sweat from his face. "I know the risks. But I also know the responsibility. This championship, it's not just a title. It's a promise. To be the best. To carry this company." He paused for a moment. Looked down at his knee. "But some days, it feels like my body can't keep the promise anymore." Prophetic words. Words that now feel more like a farewell than a prelude. And yet, the pain wasn't just physical. It wasn't just Seth who collapsed that night. It was the fragile balance of WWE's main event scene. Because without Seth Rollins, a vacuum was created. A void. And if there's one truth in professional wrestling, it's that nature abhors a vacuum. Enter Paul Heyman. The same man who had guided Rollins to the top. The man who convinced the WWE Universe that Seth was the future. The man who stood beside him as he raised the world title after each defense. And the man whose expression, backstage, was eerily calm when the injury occurred. Was it concern? Or was it satisfaction? There were murmurs. Whispers in the halls. Superstars texting each other behind the scenes. Something didn't add up. Rollins hadn't complained of any injury before the match. No taped knee. No advance warning. He looked fine. Until he wasn't. And the moment he went down, Heyman went silent. He left the arena minutes after the show ended, refusing to speak to reporters, ducking out through the back exit under private security. It wasn't until the following morning that Heyman issued a cryptic message on social media. In this business, timing is everything. One man's fall can become another's rise. That's not betrayal. That's nature. It wasn't a message of support. It wasn't even a message of sorrow. It was a statement. Cold. Calculated. Almost rehearsed. And that's when it hit fans across the globe. This wasn't just a tragedy. This was a power play. As Rollins underwent scans and prepared for the possibility of surgery, Paul Heyman was already positioning himself to fill the void. Pushing Solo Sikoa to step up. Hinting at Braun Breaker as a possible challenger for the now vacant SummerSlam slot. Suggesting that the world title might need to be rescued from limbo. And amidst the chaos, as WWE scrambled for a plan B, one name began trending once again. Roman Reigns. For the first time in months, fans began to speculate, what if the tribal chief returned now? What if he reclaimed his spot while the others were vulnerable? And just like that, the prophecy came true. But we'll get to that in the next section. For now, one thing is painfully clear, Seth Rollins' injury wasn't just a personal disaster. It was a seismic shift in the WWE universe. A fracture that reached beyond bones and ligaments, into the very foundation of loyalty, ambition, and trust. Because in WWE, pain is never just physical. Sometimes, it's strategic. And sometimes, it's delivered with a smile. Silence can be a terrifying thing, especially when it comes from a man like Roman Reigns. When the tribal chief vanished from WWE programming in early 2025, the company gave no official explanation. No injury was reported. No farewell address aired. No cryptic Instagram post. Nothing. 1 week he was headlining pay-per-views, towering above Solo Sikoa, leading what was left of the bloodline into the next phase of domination. The next week? He was gone. Completely. And the silence that followed wasn't just a gap in the programming schedule, it was a strategic disappearance. One that left fans, insiders, and even superstars guessing. Where was Roman Reigns? Why did he walk away? And perhaps most importantly, what was he planning? To understand the gravity of that silence, we need to rewind. WrestleMania 41. That night was supposed to be his defining chapter. A final coronation for the head of the table. A moment where every title, every betrayal, and every blood sacrifice paid off. But it didn't go that way. Roman Reigns didn't walk out with gold. He didn't walk out with his family intact. He didn't walk out at all. He was left sprawled in the middle of the ring, betrayed, defeated, and dethroned. Jacob Fatu had turned. Solo Sikoa had taken power. The family that once surrounded him had splintered like cracked glass. And in that moment of ultimate vulnerability, Roman Reigns did the one thing no one expected. He said nothing. No press conference. No vengeance promo. No backstage meltdown. He simply disappeared. In the days and weeks that followed, the internet became a breeding ground for conspiracy. Reddit threads lit up. Twitter was flooded with theories. Had Roman quietly retired? Was he nursing an unannounced injury? Was this part of a greater bloodline plan? The WWE creative team was no help, internal sources claimed even the writers were being kept in the dark. Vince McMahon wasn't involved. Triple H refused to comment. Paul Heyman dodged every question. All roads led nowhere. But if there's one thing Roman Reigns has always mastered, it's control. Control of the spotlight. Control of the message. Control of perception. What if the silence wasn't weakness? What if it was a trap? As the weeks turned into months, the rest of WWE evolved. Solo Sikoa rose to prominence on SmackDown, flanked by Tama Tonga and a dangerous new iteration of the Bloodline. Paul Heyman shifted his allegiance towards Seth Rollins, appearing beside him on Raw, managing his championship defenses with eerie calm. Braun Breaker began asserting his presence. The power vacuum Roman left behind was being filled, but not by men worthy of the crown. By opportunists. And while the rest of the world forgot to ask where is Roman Reigns, he was watching. From afar. From the shadows. Waiting. We later learned, through an off-the-record source close to WWE security, that Roman never truly left the business. He wasn't out of the country. He wasn't in rehab. He was in Florida. Training in private facilities. Meeting with family members. Taking calls with select members of the Anoa'i dynasty. Building something. Silence, it turns out, was his weapon. Because silence makes people comfortable. It makes them overconfident. It makes them say things they wouldn't dare say if they knew you were listening. And that's exactly what Roman wanted. For Paul Heyman to speak freely. For Seth Rollins to drop his guard. For Solo Sikoa to believe the throne was unguarded. In a podcast appearance that was never aired, only leaked in fragments, a production assistant claimed Roman Reigns said the following during a closed-door discussion with an executive. "Let them think I'm gone. Let them get comfortable. Then I'll walk through that door and remind them what fear looks like." Chilling. And so, the plan continued. Quietly. Strategically. But it wasn't just about Roman anymore. During his absence, something else was stirring, something dangerous. Jacob Fatu and Zilla Fatu, both absent from WWE programming for weeks, were reportedly seen entering a private gym in Pensacola. Not once. Not twice. Regularly. With Roman Reigns. This wasn't a coincidence. This was preparation. The bloodline had fractured, yes. But Roman Reigns wasn't looking to rebuild it. He was building something new. Insiders began to whisper about a new faction. A leaner, deadlier force. Not rooted in tradition, but in vengeance. Roman wasn't interested in family politics anymore. He wasn't interested in playing tribal chief for a group that no longer respected him. No. He was preparing for war. A war not against outsiders, but against those who betrayed him from within. And Paul Heyman was at the top of that list. Let's not forget, Heyman was more than just Roman's advocate. He was his confidant. His architect. The man who had helped engineer the bloodline from the ground up. Every manipulation. Every ambush. Every title defense. That empire had Heyman's fingerprints all over it. And for over 3 years, Roman trusted him with everything. Until the cracks appeared. Until Paul Heyman started spending more time at Raw than SmackDown. Until Paul Heyman started whispering in Seth Rollins' ear. Until Paul Heyman smiled just a little.